I'm going to grab a glass of water if it's going to be a second.
Yep. Go ahead. You're welcome to. Hey, how's it going? Yo, what's up, Unnotched? He is grabbing a glass of water real quick.
I'm on.
Perfect. Let's see. It's the live kicked off on YouTube. Okay, I guess it created a different live than the one. That's weird. Drinking water may turn you gay. Noted. Okay. Chat's already coming in. All right. So we'll go ahead and get going. Welcome back to the Veganless podcast. I'm Daniel, and today we have Jared from Whitetail Adrenaline in here. I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
I guess for those that don't know, I produce public land, all public land, all on the ground videos. I did for 13 seasons. And then, our very first one was some public, some by permission, then all public land series. Then our latest Uncuffed is mainly public with some door knocking. We don't know these people, but occasionally we had some hunts on there of the Uncuffed. So that's what I do. DVDs for life.
It's crazy seeing people still successful with DVDs in the modern world.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So I always like to start out with one piece of advice for new hunters. What do you have?
Quick second. Is there a background noise coming through? I can shut this door quick if there is.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back. Alrighty, it created a whole different link for the YouTube live, so I guess that sucks, but it is what it is. All right, but yes, we will go ahead and get going. I can't English today, apparently. So yeah, do you have one piece of advice for new hunters?
One piece of advice for new hunters. Go out there and have a good time. Don't get just enjoy yourself. Don't get too caught up in this world gets pretty busy, and sometimes it's like just have a good time with it. Make sure you're having a good time, and a good time might be taking it seriously and getting that could be a good time. Just I guess that would kind of be my piece of advice. And I guess to new hunters, don't worry about if all you got is what you got, and it might not be a lot of equipment. Just make it work. People that watch the videos going way back, definitely, we don't make a point of pointing that out, but maybe all you got is a beater car. Maybe some people caught it the first 5 years of the video. I didn't even own a compound bow. I used one of the other guys. So, just have a good time and use what you got to work with.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Not everyone has endless resources. You hop on, YouTube, for instance, and you see a lot of people with, fancy new equipment, machinery, private land, so on and so forth. You don't need any of that. You may not be able to devote your whole life to hunting and have to use what time you have. So I think that's a great piece of advice. All right. So do you have any stories that come to mind, like maybe your favorite hunt?
Ooh, for a long time, it was one that was on our second video. A lot of people liked that hunt. I stalked a buck for 5 hours along these railroad tracks. It was in a timber setting, and it probably doesn't have the effect it did back then because you didn't see a lot of spot and stock whitetail stuff going on. So I think it probably, for me personally, outside of the video, how it all unfolded and how we went in there. We were still doing some tree stand stuff back then. We went way back into this piece, hung the stands. I get cold sometimes, well, usually pretty easy. And that's what happened after about an hour. And I also started to grow a little bored and wanted to check this piece out more, and started still hunting, basically scouting while hunting, still hunting. Sorry about that.
All good.
Anyways, and ended up spotting this big buck, and it took 5 hours and some shenanigans, doing a big loop, losing our visual, and kind of jiving between some different satellite bucks. For a long time, that was my favorite one. And then the way a big typical that I shot some years after that unfolded, that became even more probably special to me. Just it was a 4-day kind of fiasco on the Defiance videos. So people that have watched that, they know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that sounds like quite a time. A lot of people don't have the patience for, a stalk of that length. I guess that brings up a good point too. You guys mainly hunt public. How do you approach finding like what land you're going to hunt? Do you do a lot of e-scouting, or do you just drive around in glass? Or
Yeah, I base a lot on my gut feeling and instinct. The e-scouting, I think it used to be a lot more effective, and not that it can't be, but kind of got to take it with a grain of salt to a certain degree, or look at it a little bit differently. Like the stuff that's pretty obvious, it then is obvious for a lot of other guys as well. So I don't get too wrapped up in that as far as premeditating or pre-planning before I actually arrive the day I'm hunting and evaluate it. And then I make my judgment based off that, of whether I'm going to even enter the piece, or what part of the piece, or completely scrap it, or completely scrap the entire area after, sifting, through or by several pieces in the area. If I deem the whole area is not worthy of the time, then I move on. And maybe it is just that week. I've seen that before. It's all based situational. You can roll into an area and it could be overrun with people and stuff, and 2 weeks later maybe that's all dissipated, and it can totally change.
that makes sense. So when you kind of roll up to an area, do you kind of like weigh in how many other cars are there, or are you glassing, or all of the above?
Yeah, obviously rut. During the most of the rest of the time of year, I pay quite a bit of attention to pressure, and not that I don't during the rut. I do. It's just I've seen situations where maybe a big buck pushed a doe into a spot. He has no idea 200 yards up the road is guys have been hunting all year, because maybe he came from 2 miles away on private and has been hanging out there all year, and he has no clue. And same maybe with the doe. So I do factor that in during the rut, but you got to treat it a little bit like there could be a big one that is
Hmm.
spending time elsewhere all year and has no idea that pressure's there. Am I going to enter the piece where there's a bunch of vehicles and people, it appears, been hunting? Probably not. I'm probably going to, but if I, doesn't mean I don't have my eyes going while I'm maybe driving by it or something like that. And I mean, it's not uncommon to have that we've spotted big ones not far or right in the vicinity of where other guys are hunting. That's not entirely uncommon, although it kind of falls a little bit lower on the probability, I guess, but
Hmm.
not necessarily ends all kind of situation. So
Makes sense. It's just interesting to listen to because it goes against the grains of a lot of what people believe or do. So it's fun seeing all the different perspectives that actually can still work. There's not one way to hunt. It's really what you make of it, what fits you best.
yeah, yeah, it is, and there's just so many relative factors. You get into an area
Hmm.
that's got quite a few mature bucks in that area per square mile. And yeah, you might have a decent amount of hunting pressure on a daily basis, but here again, if it's rut, I mean, there could be a big one that has no clue that that's been going on all year long and stumbles on into that. I've seen that multiple times. So it's,
Hmm.
I,
Anything can happen during the
I,
rut.
I only had a few days to hunt this year. I did do some filming too, but, I actually filmed Chancey's kill, but the one he got. But I got on a big one that was around 160-inch 9-pointer, and most days at some point there was a vehicle parked right there, and I found him in the timber. I did not have the visual from the vehicle. I did enter. There was nobody parked there. There was, I believe, if I remember right, there was two vehicles parked about 300 yards up, but just
Hmm.
with the lay of everything, I knew they weren't hunting right in that little pocket, and so I kind of went in there tiptoeing, and I didn't kill the buck. Probably would have with a compound, longer range situation,
Hmm.
um, but I got on a big one, and that was public. So
Awesome. Yeah, I think you guys have probably the most unique content with the over the shoulder. Um, like I enjoy, stands and all that, but just for kind of, I guess, no pun intended, but the adrenaline of it, like I feel like it's so much more intense for both the viewer and the hunter doing the spot and stalk, being eye to eye level on the ground with these animals, trying to outsmart them.
it is, and what you just said there, I didn't actually intentionally plan that. I just liked the name Whitetail Adrenaline.
Hmm.
It always just kind of was catchy to me. I didn't even think about that for up until, I don't know, it's probably a few years ago, maybe it was 5 years ago. I was like,
Hmm.
it's pretty fitting to I just always liked it,
Right.
but I didn't actually try to like live up to the adrenaline.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I
yeah,
believe you.
I
No.
think that's why it is also authentic, is because I'm not trying
Hmm.
to force myself to live up to it. It's just I do love hunting that way. So
Hmm. Yeah.
it is very fitting, ironically.
That's how I kind of enjoyed hunting, was being on the ground and everything growing up. But I dove into self filming and such. And as you, I'm sure, are aware, self filming makes it a little hard to do over the shoulder, spot and stalk, kind of pushes you to more of the stand or blind or sit. So I've been on the look for the camera guy myself to be able to do more of it and get back to that, because it's just an unmatched feeling of being eye to eye and executing, making it
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, it's very intense. It gets the nerves going, and
Hmm.
you know, I was at an event this past weekend in Northern Michigan, and we had some different conversations. And I've said this for many years. I'm addicted to hunting on the ground, but actually a hybrid system of sometimes stationary, because as you're covering that ground on the ground with your feet, you come across places and spots where it's like, man, I know if I just sat right there for 3 days and just had the patience, a big one, I'm sure will come through there. And there's probably many times, well, there's certainly times, but how many? I don't know, because I didn't stick around to find
Hmm.
out. But
Right.
having a hybrid system of kind of a balance of both of those, I think would be very beneficial. I just
Mhm.
really enjoy hunting on the ground.
So I'd say the most like blood pumping videos from you guys are, or at least in my opinion, is the spot and stalk creeping up on him with a decoy and like just watching that animal get within 10 yards, however close to you, is insane. What made you guys think of doing that?
It could have been. I just can't recall. It could have been Chansey back in that era. He talked a lot about doing it with turkeys.
Yeah.
It could have been, I met him back in 09. I just
Hmm.
know that when I got to hunt Kansas the first time with a bow back in 2011 on the Drop in the Hammer video, there was these deer in these really short cattails. Whoops. Anyways, there was these bucks I was chasing. I only had 3.5 days, and I had 3 or 4 or 5. I don't remember what it was. A handful of situations in that stuff that I was like, I even went to like Walmart and tried to find like in the back or whatever store was around there. I can't remember, to try to find like a piece of cardboard I could just kind of like cut out
A
or
shape.
whatever. And I didn't find anything that we even tried. But the next year is when we came back with what I'd call a generation one, which we did not have success to it. People that watched that video probably thought we were out of our minds, and rightfully so. But we realized after one season, which is what normally happens when you try something new, and you have nothing to go off of that's out there or that you can find out there, you don't know how it's going to work. And you evaluate what went wrong, and that's what we did. And we came back with a generation 2, and the generation 2 worked much better, and that's when it started to be successful for us. And that was in the Reckoning. Sorry, I'm switching lights. I don't know what's going on with that one.
Oh, you're all good. You're having a
So
party over there. It's fine.
yeah. So we came back with that generation 2 and made those changes, and it worked really well in a few situations. Not all. It's a tool. It's a product tool. It's not a product we sold, but it's a product we built. So you've got hunter skill, and then you've hunter skill tools, and you got product tools. And not always is this skill that I have acquired in this, or maybe finessed and gotten good at over here, that doesn't always apply. It might not work in this scenario, just like this decoy might not work in this scenario or be the best plan. It might not be a grunt tube. It could be the rattle and antlers. It could be a combination. They're just all tools, and that's how I try to look at it.
Yep.
Is in that perspective.
Yeah, I'm always on here talking about like the toolkit because there's so many different pieces, and you can think you know as much as you like desire about whitetail or animals in general, but at the end of the day, that animal has free will, and you can't like dictate that. So,
its own beast.
Yep, exactly. That's pretty cool that you guys kind of developed your own thing there for your own use case, and you, as you mentioned, you may come out and not succeed the first time, but that's kind of part of innovating, isn't it? Like, you're not copy pasting, you're building something for yourself. So,
yeah, and when something like that goes, like, I'm not going to worry about what people think. Like, I'm sure it looks stupid that first year trying it, but it's like, I expected that. I mean, I produced the video content, I expected that, but they thought it was crazy to produce a public land whitetail video back then. They thought it was crazy, and I say they,
yeah,
a lot, oh, you can't hunt deer on the ground. You can't be successful doing that on a regular basis. That's a fluke. You could never do that in this state. And I didn't really comment to that stuff. I'm not going to worry too much about what other people think. It might seem to them, but there's been plenty now over the past 5-10 years that have really began to have great success hunting deer on the ground, and also producing other public land content or finding just successful hunters finding success on public land, to where it used to seem unbelievable or impossible, but it's kind of more of a turned into more of a reality for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's really what you put in. You can sit and make excuses all day, or you could get out there and do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
And if you worry too much about what everybody else thinks about what you're doing and how you're doing it wrong when you're trying something new, I mean, the visionary is the only one that really knows where they're going. Everybody else can kind of speculate and make assumptions, and maybe they'll be right. I've tried things and I'm like, yeah. I've tried some things that I'm like, I'm not sure we'll be able to ever finesse that enough to make it, work on a regular basis or whatever. So it's not that those people are always wrong, but you can't worry too much about that.
People are always used to seeing the end product, not all of the failures it takes to get there. So as a content creator, these people think that they're, hurting you, but really, in today's social media and modern world too, all of those negative comments and stuff they're throwing on the post are literally just pushing you farther into the algorithm. So realistically,
I don't know how all that works.
Yeah, I know you're DVD wise mainly, but it's like there's a lot of negativity out there on content or trying new things and everything. And at the end, like I'll just comment back and be like, hey, thank you for liking and commenting. You're pushing the video to more people. Like you're doing nothing but helping me. So kind of just fuels the passion even more. So
yeah. And I don't like to go down the road of capitalizing on it. Like I'll show them, then you're not doing it for as
the passion.
Yeah. You can lose yourself, I think, in that kind of, oh, he said I can't do that, I'll show him, and
Right.
It's easy to go down that road as a human being, but
it is.
I would caution against that myself.
Yeah. And it's not so much trying to appease them or anything either. It's more like just literally them commenting makes the platform think that it's better content and being interacted with. So it just shoves it out more. Right. So, always listen to all the comment or read the comments, whatever, see what they have to say, but kind of just go with the flow, stick with your dreams.
Yeah. And other people, that anybody that reads those negative comments that, that's a dangerous road too. That can be a slippery road if you let it eat.
Yeah.
I think there's, when I read sometimes read one, I do a quick evaluation, like, well, am I really doing anything bad? That's where I kind of draw the line. Do they have a point? Do they have a point? Does their negativity mean well, or is it?
Yeah, is it constructive or is it just someone on the internet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time we know which one it is, or it's a combination of both, though, too.
Most definitely.
So.
By the way, all the platforms, feel free to ask questions, and it's encouraged and such. As I told you to begin with, which kind of aligns with you guys, I do everything unscripted. Like, I think it's far more fulfilling and fun just kind of going with the flow and having the natural stories come out. Like, you can very obviously tell if things are scripted and
yeah, it's kind of, in the production world, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It keeps hunting fun for me and the guys out there, because it's just totally what we'd be doing if there wasn't a camera there. But then to produce it to a high standard quality and get that story to flow and make sense, and take people through that journey, that is a nightmare.
Yeah.
It is an absolute. I wouldn't wish that on people.
Yeah.
Like it's like pick your battle. Like,
yep.
I wouldn't enjoy doing the scripted stuff when it came to hunting, and I'd probably lose my love for that. Maybe not for the hunting, but I would lose it for a while trying to figure out what I think if I was doing that. But but it's a pain to produce, and it takes a lot more time. It just does. Not if you're gonna produce a high end, really well flowing
Mm-hmm.
content. I don't know how to do that super quick. Not in a
Mm-hmm.
hunt setting. So
Right. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Um, with that in mind, you guys are pretty unscripted. Do you try to kind of keep a mental note in your head while you're out there to do any sort of like B-roll and staying on top of that? I
oh
feel
yeah,
like that's something I often overlook, and then I'm editing. I'm like, well, shit, I
yeah.
have 5 clips of rattling antlers, but like, what else?
Yeah. The guys that film for us, they're really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Zinio, he's been here for a long time. Ethan's come a long ways. He didn't have any filming experience, and that guy is crushing some amazing content too. And TC stepped in. He's got a hell of a resume, and all of those guys are on point and capturing the necessary elements as that story's unfolding, which is a very challenging thing to do, to be on point and recognize
Mm-hmm.
I got to capture this. I need this to go with this for the editor to tell the story. And so, yeah, it's a lot of moving parts to make Whitetail Adrenaline what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
The content,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yep. Yeah. How many hours was it you said that you had in editing the last
I
DVD?
it was just Andy and myself for the most part. My buddy John stepped in for a bit in the summer on that, on some color grading. But between Andy and I, we had to have over 5,000 hours. I mean, it just, I mean, put things into perspective. I didn't tally up the exact minute, but it's around 500 hours
Mm.
of just content. That's without any editing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty high ratio, I guess. And not there was some things we could kind of skip over,
Mm-hmm.
but most of it had to get gone.
That's a lot of organizing and sifting through content.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's absolutely crazy to
That's
think
why it's so
of.
difficult to duplicate, though.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a problem. You can hand that content to 100 different editors, and it's going
Mm-hmm.
to come up looking 100 different ways. And so
Yep.
it's so difficult to produce that type of content,
Right.
which
But
is
I
what
mean,
helps keep it
it's what
unique.
makes it though. Yeah.
Right.
That's, I think, a big thing that keeps you alive and the social media or like instant era versus DVDs and such. So another thing that really sets you guys apart is the whole no sponsors. And I think that goes back to you wanted to be unscripted, be able to do kind of what you want. Um, how is it to kind of manage without? I know you guys are on your feet at this point, but I feel like it definitely would probably have an effect on kind of growth and
Yeah.
bearings.
Yeah. No. So in the early days, because we didn't have a base built, I knew that companies weren't really going to take much of,
Mm-hmm.
you might get a little free product or
Yeah.
whatever, but until you got a base, you're not going to have, you can have all the ideas and visions and dreams, but until you actually have it in the works going and have a base developed, you don't have a lot of value to them. Right. And
Right.
so back then, and this is a different era than where we are now,
Mm-hmm.
but back in that era of 15, 20 years ago, which I got started 17 years ago, or is it 17? It was different back then. And I felt like, okay, we don't have a base, so there's not really dollar value that we can gain starting out. We're going to have to produce content anyway. I didn't like the idea of having 12 or 15 bosses have dictatorship over
Right.
what makes the video or what not. And so before I say anything more, that's shifted a lot since that period.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the companies and a lot of the industry pulled back the reins a lot for producers to be able to
Mm-hmm.
show what I feel is more authentic or let those stories unfold, maybe a little bit more true. So that was one of the things. And I wanted to keep hunting fun and light for me and the guys on the crew, and I felt
Hmm.
like that would disrupt and tamper with that
Right.
as well back in that era, to where even that I think is a little bit more loose. Well, depends on the company probably that a
Hmm.
producer would be
And the
working.
depth of the contract and all that.
Yeah. So, if I were to get into the business now, and especially in the digital world, I wouldn't have as much apprehension probably as I did in those early days about
Hmm.
about going down that road. But we got established strong enough, and I like being my own boss, and I like having full freedom
Right.
on
What you do.
what I do. And so that's not to say that there aren't companies that would still allow that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because obviously, as I was mentioning, you have to weigh in growth opportunity. And then at the end of the day, it's pretty cool being able to say that you own and have full decision making and everything on your own production. So,
Right. Right.
do you guys have any big plans for this year you're willing to share? Or any big
Well,
hunts or?
very soon I got to start looking at what we're gonna do for upcoming fall hunts, and
Mhm.
that's pretty standard every year. I don't start. I should have been on top of some elk drawing things the past
Mhm.
couple of months, but I wasn't. So I believe I missed a couple already. Well, I know I missed a couple already as far as that goes, at least. So anyway, I will be, or we will be soon looking at that. So
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm absolutely excited to get an elk hunt going at some point. That's kind of the bucket list for me, top of the
yeah,
list right now.
yeah. I chased him for a period of time with a bow, and
Hmm.
that was a lot of fun. I got
Yeah.
close scenarios. Compound, I probably would have done extremely well on some big bulls,
Hmm.
but I mean, anything can happen between the time the arrow leaves the bow, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can speculate. I mean, but
So
it
many
was a lot of fun.
factors.
It was a lot of fun, a lot of adventure, and I'll do that at some point here coming up again.
Hmm.
We've done
Yes.
with the guns over the years already.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Yeah. I started building points for a Wyoming archery hunt. So that'll be fun when it gets here. And then this fall, I'm thinking about doing a South Dakota mule deer
okay.
hunt and just trying to get there. Do you have any animals that are like on your bucket list that you haven't hunted yet, or any places you want to go? Or
I definitely want to finish up what I got started on the elk bow stuff
Mhm.
at some point, whenever the stars align for that to happen. Um, I want to do like an Alaskan or Yukon moose someday. That'll be kind of like
Mhm.
a separate film, and I got some other similar type stuff. But I've loved chasing deer for a long time. I think those
Mhm.
types of hunts, I'm more like I want to do different adventures, see different places, and some of those animals definitely trigger me. Yeah, you get an elk, a big herd bull elk, bugling and fired up, and I mean
Mhm.
it's pretty hard to beat that. I don't know what moose would be like. I think it'd be cool to at least do that once,
Mhm.
and I'd evaluate whether it was something I wanted to do again or not.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah, the an elk bugle is just like it awakens your soul. Like
yeah,
just the sound of it is pretty awesome.
yeah. Especially when they're close, it's kind of
I haven't got that one yet. I can't
yeah,
wait.
yeah. It, it,
But
it it's I don't know. It's almost like a buck and run, except for it's making this thunderous noise. And
mhm.
I mean, kind of. Maybe that's a good way to explain it. Maybe not. But for me,
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying cuz I mean listening in videos and stuff like it like I could see how in person close it would be just absolutely thrilling.
yeah.
Um we had a buck this past season that was locked onto a doe and he was doing like the tending grunt for like an hour and a half. And it was pretty cool to hear and experience. And we ended up getting down and starting to put a spot and stalk on him. And then we get up like 30 yards, but he was in thick woods. So we had to get a little closer, get a shot angle. And then we presume geese hunters from the neighbor's field just like hauled ass through with their truck right past at the same exact time. And he just spooked and ran into the woods. It was so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
yeah.
Those bucks all pinned up doing that too.
Mhm.
That big one that I mentioned, the 169 pointer, I pegged just a glint of him in these pine trees, and there was some other trees between us. And it took about 5-10 minutes to even know if it was a buck, but he ended up starting to do that, and yeah, that's a fun time.
Yeah, he was just hung up there for like an hour and a half. We tried, buck grunts, rattling antlers, doe. Like we tried everything we could think of in the books, and he just didn't care. And finally tried to go down, and just didn't pan out,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
they usually don't care when they're
Yeah,
doing that kind
at
of
that point, right? Can't blame him, I guess.
Yeah, that's where I usually lay quiet and try to position myself.
Right.
But I tried that stuff years ago, but I've found, it's every situation's different though. And sometimes you run out of light and it's like, well, I'll try something stupid, and maybe he's an
Right.
aggressive buck, and maybe I've crossed the threshold to where he's going to try to run me off. That's where it's like, it's really hard to say what to do in every exact scenario unless you're actually there and you've had a lot of experience doing it. It's really hard.
Back to that free will.
Yeah.
They can make whatever choices they want, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
Oh. Let's see. So we talked new hunter advice, talked a little bit about favorite hunt and such. Out of your videos, what would you say your favorite one is?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Because and I've asked a lot of people, what's your favorite one? And they get tongue-tied a lot of times. I mean, I would say if there's anyone that ranks up there, it's probably Defiance 1. That's probably the highest ranking one that I hear, but I get people that get tongue-tied quite often, and I know exactly what they mean, because there's certain things that happen in pretty much
different
every
ones
one that it's like, you can't replace that. How do you replace it? Like uncuffed, that's the highest production quality I've ever put out in what I've produced on an editor standpoint. But then there's other hunts over the years that, you were talking about some of that decoy stuff or whatnot. And it's like, sometimes that can over trump the production quality and overall experience there.
Yep.
So it's really hard to say. I think, Defiance 1, that's been, I'd say, the overall. The next one I've got planned to come out, that season could trump that one for a lot of people with some of the hunts that are going to be coming out. So just some really, really good. That season, it was like uncuffed, except for everything was coming together really smooth and really well. And there are some big animals and really cool hunts. So that one's going to fly by. I mean, it's going to be probably about 8 hours by the time it's finished product, but it's going to be 8 hours that's going to fly. So
there we go. Yeah, that's part of it too. You can't really dictate how your season's going to go. So I'm going to have to go with it. So for those that don't watch your stuff, is like your content from like individual year seasons, or do they kind of mesh together? How often do you release?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, how often do you release DVDs?
So each title or season is that season, with the only exception being, I think it was the ride. I spliced in just a little bit that never made video, where Chansey rattled in like 20 bucks in late season the year before, and I never got around to producing that. And so I did splice that in, I believe, on the ride. He didn't end up getting one, but there was a lot of situations where he was rattling in different bucks, a lot of cool footage and whatnot. So I think it was the ride that I spliced that in. Otherwise, it's all footage from that season.
Nice. All right, so we do have a question. Broke Dog 70. What does Whitetail Adrenaline look like 5 years from now?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. As much as I have loved producing the DVDs, I think we'll still be producing DVDs, but all the content, I think that will all be on digital by that point. So I don't want to say too much as far as what that looks like 5 years out. So I've got some things, exciting things in the works, and I've got, I got a bit of a visionary mind. So
Mm-hmm.
is probably how a lot of these things came to happen on and you don't always, when you got that mind, some of those you don't ever get to fulfill or whatever they might be. It might,
Mm-hmm.
certain things come, happen that change or
Mm-hmm. You have
alter
to shift
or
with the business. Yeah.
yeah, and exactly. So I'm excited about the content we've got coming out. Very excited about that. And I've got some things I'm very interested in that I've been pursuing on the archery side of things as well. So, that's about all I'll say about that. So,
Hey, so exciting things coming though.
yeah.
And then Robert asks, what are some public tactics you would advise Midwest hunters to deploy or avoid?
Ooh, well, some public tactics. I mean, the first thing, and it doesn't really matter what state or area I've hunted public land, the more efficiently you can minimize acreage, that's going to put you ahead. And that one's tough to say. Like we had this conversation in northern Michigan this last weekend, and my approach to that would implement different strategies than in the plains to do that. In the plains, in some of the plains areas, may have a decent percentage of big bucks in that area, but a lot of it is pretty desolate without, so you've got to cover a lot of ground and minimize that acreage because most of it's not worth your time. And it's really no different, I don't think, in the big woods where the populations are low. You still got to, whether it's, and it depends on the time of year, if you got snow, you can track a big buck. You can use that information. When we were up there for that event, all of us, it was a great event. And Kevin there, he mentioned, traveling those roads in the off season or even maybe while the season's going on that he does to find out where those deer are. So, I mean, he's minimized in that particular case. He's trying to find where the deer are, but a byproduct of that, he's minimizing a lot of acreage. I like to focus on the minimizing a lot of acreage because if you're just looking for the honey haul, you're going to get disappointed a lot in the meantime. So I just know that that's part of the process. A lot of it, most of the time, is junk and it's not worth my time. So if I keep that mentality, yes, I'm trying to find where would be a good spot or whatnot. So that's the first thing that mentality that I have when I'm approaching something public wise in the Midwest. If it's more wooded stuff, you can. One thing that I used to do in Wisconsin quite a bit is, I would spend some time in the vehicle and drive by all those public places just to get an idea of pressure, what it looks like, get a feel for it. And, quite often I'm not getting a visual, but I'm able to basically eliminate a lot of acreage that I don't think is going to be worth my time before I ever even leave the vehicle, if that kind of makes sense. So, and then, I'd maybe have to go on a still hunting cruise or whatnot. So,
I think that was a good answer. My question to follow up, what's your favorite terrain to hunt?
ooh, well, for a while, the prairies were because it was a new experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've grown pretty dull for me. Like they're cool for about a day if I've been, not out, not out hunting them. It's
Mm-hmm.
cool, but it wears off very quick after doing it all these years. And it's like, I want some timber back, and that's why, I killed one the year before last. I was just getting ready. I was like 400 yards from getting dumped out to do a 2-mile timber stalk. And I spotted a big buck, or maybe it wasn't me, maybe it was Tanner or Ethan. I can't remember who. It doesn't really matter, but a big buck with a doe got spotted, and they were out in this grass that was close to the woods. But I'm like, what do I do? It's a 150-inch buck. It's on public. I'm going after it with a longbow. Yes, I want to do a timber stalk, but probably shouldn't pass that opportunity up. So now this year, I didn't get a lot of time to do hunting myself, but I did focus more on timber stuff, and I didn't get that one that I talked about earlier, but that was straight up going in cold without a visual, and pegged him before he saw me and before his doe that he was with. And it would have been a good situation for a compound. Pretty tricky to get in tight. It was like less than 5-mile-an-hour winds. We had a good wind, but it just lessened just enough that a little current nipped over, just made its way over. And I knew we were pushing, but there wasn't any other way we could really do it. I was about to back out, and then that happened, and hope that he was still in there the next day. And because I was reading it, and I think the doe was just coming into heat is what I was. So he was probably going to be there for 2-3 days, and being a weekday, not going to probably deal with much for pressure issues for a couple of days. So that was my plan, and we were only a couple of minutes away from it. TC was with me, and I was like, I think we need to back out and just bank he's going to be here tomorrow. And usually I don't do that, but there's no way we're going to get a wind current, and there's no way to do a loop and approach it differently because we've got the primary wind. It's so soft. It's going to catch and suck to him, which is what happened.
So then with your style of hunting, do you prefer stronger winds then so you can kind of mask your movement with the noise?
Yeah. Movement, noise, but also the wind. It's the one coming out in the next film I killed. We had very stiff winds, but you got to watch that terrain. And we were staying high. We didn't know exactly where the deer was. It had been 7-8 hours since I seen him from about 2 miles out go over this ridge. It was early season, so I figured he was bedded somewhere on the other side of that ridge. And we waited for those winds to pick up, went in on him to try to find where he was at. I didn't spot him till I was 7 yards from him. And as soon as I did, I beelined it up the ridge to where Ethan was, which was only about 5 yards or something. But that gave me just enough height to keep that wind, because we were close to the top, keep it blowing over, because it was a gusty type wind. It was coming in and out. And so we hung up high so that wind could keep going. And then as soon as those winds felt like they were picking up strong, we shot down there as fast as we could. And I killed that one at either 4 or 4.5 yards.
That's wild.
But it's the tricks you learn over the years. It's like in that exact scenario, I already knew what was going to happen. If I would have hung out there waiting for Ethan to get down to me, and I had to wait. I had to quick get to him, keep that scent blowing high, wait for the gust to come in, what I felt like was going to be strong, and give us a couple minutes and fly down there and make it happen. So
there we go. Another question from Robert. What is one piece of advice you could give to the self-filming hunter other than use quality equipment?
Ooh. Self-filming. That's a challenge. Boy. And that's a tough one on a lot of, I don't know if you're just trying to capture, if the person's trying to capture their own hunt, and I missed where the name of who that was, but whoever posted that, if you're just trying to capture your own hunt to show your friends, that's completely different than trying to produce a storyline that has everything that. So it's challenging to, and I don't know if that's being a ground hunter. That changes everything. If you're trying to self-film and you're a still hunter guy versus a tree stand or blind, I mean, that changes. That one's a tough one to answer without knowing more about what we're trying to accomplish in terms of, are we just trying to get our shot on camera? Because if that's the case, probably the simplest. I think there's a company, I forget what company, came out with a pretty slick mount. I seen them out in Pennsylvania, and you can just pop your phone on real quick on the front of your bow or something. If you're just trying to.
I think I just saw them at the Deer Classic. Painted Arrow, maybe.
They may have one too. I don't think that was.
I'm not sure.
But I mean, if you're just trying to get your kill shot, personally, I probably wouldn't screw around too much with the action cameras, just because your phone has such a good battery and it seems like it works generally. The phones have gotten really good. I've had issues at times, and pretty much every day you're hitting the woods. It's like everybody makes sure their phones charge, batteries filled, but it's really easy to go and like charge your battery. Go hang out all day in the cold weather, forget to charge it, and then 3 days later when you need it to work, your battery's dead. It's really easy to do that. So I guess
knowing Robert, he was asking on the side of like for production or like YouTube.
That one's, is he probably tree stand, stationary hunting? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like saddle, tree stand, whatever can be done really.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, get a good in that particular case. If you're up in the trees, I mean, get a good mount. You don't want it to be too big and bulky that it's a pain. It's a pain to deal with. But it's been so long. I don't know if I've ever. Well, my first mature buck, I shot that one out of a tree and self-filmed it. I had an arm. But outside of that, there's better guys out there that could answer that question than me on the self-filming, just because my experience doesn't live too much in that space.
You have a different niche.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be like me trying to tell people what to do on a Cape buffalo when I've never hunted one. You know what I mean? I could.
Is that a teaser?
Talking to guys that have. What's that?
Is that a teaser? Cape Buffalo Adrenaline coming?
No, they really aren't on my list. Although I wouldn't rule that species out someday.
That'd be a pretty dangerous spot in Stalk.
Yeah.
Kyle says, and this one looks like it's for me, are these podcasts on any other platforms to listen to? Not a hunter yet, but I always enjoy listening to podcasts at work and learning things from people who put in the work and have experience on the topic. So yes, this video will on YouTube transition and go into a playlist for podcast. It'll still be in video format, but sometime after the episode, it goes into Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, goes into podcast land. So yes, Robert says, I appreciate the effort and honesty. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry I couldn't be of more help.
Hey, but at least you're the first to admit it, you know? All right. So there is something in there that sparked a follow-up, and I'm going to blank on it. So we talked about your favorite terrain to hunt, talked about you really trying to use the winds to your advantage.
Yeah, that one's usually the one that burns us the most.
You have no control on which way the wind's going to be.
And people starting out stalking and still hunting, especially in the timber, their bigger battle is going to be picking them off first before they see you. We've got that down pretty good. Not always. I mean, we're human and we are hunting these animals that are very smart. But I would say the more experience you get with this, you'll probably hone the eyes quite a bit, but the scent is going to be the trouble, especially when you're out there with two guys. And you're trying to film it with big camera, it's a lot of challenges there. You got a lot of odor coming. So, I mean, it gets tricky, especially when you got a big one and you just don't have much for winds coming. Like the day I explained this fall, I pegged him and I was just like, today's not the day. Can't we get like a 12 at a minimum or something? It's just
right.
So.
And So you brought up scent, and this is kind of a controversial. Everyone has their own opinion. Do you guys utilize scent control,
I don't.
or do you
I
just use
did.
wind?
I did the couple seasons before I launched Whitetail Adrenaline, and I did figure out how to beat their nose to where it didn't really matter where I hunted anymore. I mean, I
Mhm.
just hunt what I thought was going to be the best, which is generally for a mature buck. They're that's advantageous because if they're traveling so often, they're using that to their advantage. So if you can beat their nose, I mean, oh, the wind's perfect. Well, if it's perfect, it's probably not going to be a great hunt for a mature buck. He's
Mhm.
not going to run that corridor usually. Not always. There's always exceptions, but so no. I mean, with two of us out there, and we're moving around and all that kind of stuff. We're moving around and all that kind of stuff. It just gets to be a lot of extra scent, I guess,
Mhm. Yeah.
and a hassle in other ways.
Scent and movement and
Yes.
yeah.
So we just play the good old fashioned, and I kind of like that too. It's like you're. It's another one of those level in the playing field things, and it's just a
Mhm.
personal thing that I kind of like that. But everybody can do what they desire. That's one thing. Sometimes hunters and whatnot, or they get too. Sometimes I think they maybe get too caught up in what everybody else is doing and what everybody
Mhm.
else is
Social
doing wrong,
media.
and it's like just go have a good time and do you.
Right.
So
What does your toolkit look like on average for a spot and stock?
my bow, my quiver, my arrows, my broadheads, um, binoculars. That is the one thing outside of that. If I forget them, which occasionally happens about once a season or once every other season, I'll entirely forget them. Not usually when I leave the vehicle. I'll just forget them for the day or something
Mhm.
somewhere in there, and it just drives me nuts. Like I can't live without
Feel
them.
naked.
I just too many. That's the one cheater tool I call
Mhm.
it. That it's like I'm kind of handicapped without that. So outside of that, I don't worry too much. I just wear the super light tennis shoes all the way down to 5'10" below. Um, I just uh, mountain racing tennies, super light, very tractiony. Um, I don't even worry too much about camos. Um, but those are kind of, and if it's the right time of the year, I'll throw or the right situation, I'll throw rattling antlers
Mhm.
behind me, or a I don't have the ability that Chansey does to run the vocals of a deer through my mouth. I wish I did.
Mhm.
Um, but I might throw something like that in my pocket. But
Mhm.
I keep it pretty light on that. So
Mhm. Another a scenario. Okay, Hub Hanger says scenario. You have 30 minutes to hunt all season long. Where do you go? What day of year? What time of day? That's an interesting one.
yeah,
First off, let's focus on getting more hunting time. But
yeah. Well, I tell you what. Um, I don't know if 30 minutes means I'm walking out of work and I got 30 minutes, or if I'm arriving to my location. Sorry about these lights. I don't have.
oh, it's all good.
I need to get one because I've been doing more of these
Hmm.
types of video podcast stuff. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. 30 minutes. Okay, here was the rule that
30 minutes in a stand. They just said.
if it's all right, I'm gonna let them lights go.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the it's not a rule, but it was a mentality that my cousin Jim and I, he was in the bow hunting videos quite a bit in the early days. Now he shifted to more of a gun hunter, and I apologize he wasn't in the last video. Just he only did one hunt, and it didn't amount to. It would have been funny for people if I would have produced it, but it would have been very lengthy to produce in post
Mm-hmm.
production with not leading up to,
Mm-hmm.
Jim throwing rocks off the mountain to try to find elk. That would have been funny.
Yeah, that would.
But anyways, Jim and I, when we hunted a lot more in Wisconsin, let's say we had 2 hours from the time before we left, like where we lived, right? We would drive an hour if to hunt better quality ground, get away from people, whatever it was, to hunt an hour versus drive just a little bit out of town to hunt for an hour and 45 or an hour and a half. We found that in that particular area, we had a lot more success spending that hour to drive. And yeah, we only got to hunt an hour. There was a lot of scenarios that, and we kind of realized that's well worth the drive to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
in the case of a half hour, I'm assuming he probably means a half hour maybe from the time he's leaving the vehicle.
Yeah, it said a half hour on the stand.
Okay. Oh, a half hour in the stand. Yeah. Yeah. So, boy, that's a tough one because, I mean, what time of year?
Yeah, what time of day?
Do I call, like if nothing's happening and I got a half hour and it's the right time of year, I wouldn't be afraid to do a little calling of some sort. Maybe not over the top, but another situation. It might be that same time of year, and it might be just not the right situation to do calling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a tough one to really accurately
Mm-hmm.
answer for his exact.
Yeah, there's so many different variables to it. Like, are you somewhere that you can determine where the bedding is, where the food is, where the water is, and set up accordingly? That
Yeah.
might be a decent use of your 30 minutes or however
Yeah.
long. So,
Yeah. And we use the trick. Like if we go into a spot, we've done this I was doing this back before the videos. I'm sure Tanner was, I'm sure Chancey was too. When he was doing some of the ground stuff early on, I know he did a little bit out of the gate. He killed his first buck on the ground, very first buck with a bow on the ground. If nothing's happened, like if we go into a spot and it's just, maybe we had high hopes, whatever, and it's just not feeling right, like we wouldn't be afraid to pull out. Maybe we'd get a visual or run into something on the
mhm.
walkout. Well, I killed one and dropping the hammer doing this in timber. I was never going to make it to the vehicle, but I started still hunting my way out basically the big buck and I ran right into each other, essentially is what happened there. But doing the pull-out trick, basically, like you're not feeling it, and if we could do that, maybe it's just to get on the edge of something to overlook some CRP. Maybe that's 200 yards out. Maybe it's enough time to get to the vehicle and go quick to drive by a couple other pieces. And that gives you a leg up for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure there's been times it hasn't been the right scenario, but most of the time I would say it's put us further ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little trick there.
So one
You're not
from
necessarily
me,
killing that day, though.
right?
You're
But you're
cutting
getting
your losses.
intel.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
getting intel for the next day.
One from me is, so you earlier mentioned that you kind of just use your intuition of what feels right, but like what does a morning or like a day for you hunting and choosing your piece of public, are you just, you have this kind of log of different places you've hunted and you hop in the car and cruise out there and you're like, all right, the wind's this direction, that would be good for this piece, let's just go there?
Yeah, I mean, in a timber deal where I don't think I'm going to get a visual on one. Yeah, it's more based off the wind. If it's a prairie setting, I go off of the day before. Maybe right out of the gate, the first day of the hunt, I don't go off of much, really. Maybe the year before, and I start in a pocket where I
There
had,
was activity.
but I do not hold too high a value on what was there last year, especially in the prairies. Those deer It can be totally different. Usually, um, now, same thing though. I killed a buck back in 2010 regroup, and I hunted Iowa day one, and I got on a big one. He was in the 1/6 right out of the gate. I went into that piece cold, never seen it in the daylight. Never been up those roads. Never. I went in before the sun comes up, creeping along. No tree stands, just on the ground, just slow cruising. And I run into this big one and his doe. I end up finally getting a shot, but he had us kind of pegged. It was a high intensity, fast action situation in high winds as well. I clipped him. We ended up sifting our way through the timber and ran into a couple other pretty good bucks. Didn't kill. Of course we're going to, and there was deer and bucks. And I mean, it was this craziness, right? Well, of course we're going to start out the next day there, but I already kind of had it in the back of my head. It's probably going to be ice cold, which it was. And then with a half an hour, we pulled the plug, kind of like what we just talked about, more on the evening situation. We pulled the plug in the morning and went, I don't know, 10, 15 miles away on a drive and pegged a 150-inch buck on public. And he was cruising, and we made a mad dash sprint in there and got there just in the nick of time to get a shot. Now that buck, another high-intensity situation, we ran down in there, got set, boom, here he comes. And it was 26 yards, and the deer got a lot more drop than I thought. I hit him high. Didn't end up recovering the deer that's in the video there, but I'm sure he lived with that shot and what I've seen over the years and seen him breeding does the next morning with that shot. So I'm sure he lived. I did have eyes on him running very healthy at the end of the day, which was, I don't know how many hours, 8, 9 hours later. So I'm speculating that he made it, but my point behind that was I try to treat each day as its own. I might have a starting point based off of yesterday, but if I don't have a good feeling, it's just not happening. I'm very quick to cut it off. Now maybe I'll loop back later in the day. Maybe I'll check it out again the next day. I'm not completely, but right now I'm vacating and go try to find something else.
And are you going in pretty slow and taking your time trying to work back, or?
It just depends. What the story I was just talking about after that one high, my buddy Scott had a tag for another state. I needed to regroup. So I jumped behind the camera. We traveled to the other state for, I believe it was 3 days, 2 or 3 days. Something it was real short. And he almost got one there. He didn't. He had to get back. We hit my state on the way back, just planning for a half a day. But I went back to the original spot because I figured it was probably us being in there that probably made it so cold the next day. When I went in there the next day and evaluated what was going on, I was like, yeah, that's probably. But that little cushion of time, I popped back in there, and I slow creep. It was a frosty morning, no wind, not whatsoever. We tiptoed in, sounding like deer, and we could hear at one point. Pretty soon, we heard deer up ahead. Then we heard tingling of the antlers going on, and we just kind of soft. We didn't try to get too rammy. Just we knew that they could kind of hear us a little bit. Just sound here, and pretty soon a big 8-pointer. I don't know, 140, 45-inch 8-pointer came up the pipe, and that's the one I ended up getting. So,
what kind of standards do you have for yourself at this point for what caliber of deer you're like? What you determine is enough?
That's all relative to
the feelings and
how much time I got, how the season's been going.
Absolutely.
Even I don't like to do this, but if it's something pretty cool on video, it's also probably jacking me up. So I don't like to put, it's on camera, so I should shoot it, right?
Right.
But if it's jacking me up for the camera, as far as this is going to be really cool, it's also jacking me up. So that's right. Now I go to say like Nebraska muzzleloader late season after they've had all the pressure all year long. I'm pretty happy with a 120, 25 inch buck.
Right.
The opportunity, I mean, am I going to be jacked up about that in Iowa with a bow? No.
Right.
I mean, most of the big bucks, anybody that watches the video series will put this together if they look for it. Most of the big mature bucks, we're not getting them with a gun on public land. They're just not there. They've been ran out. They've been pressured. We're killing them with a bow, or we're getting on them with a bow, but not that often with a gun. It's drastically different.
This is a fun one. Broke dog again. If you could hunt with anyone on or off camera, who would it be?
Ooh. I can't answer that. That's a tough. That one's got me stumped. I've been very blessed and fortunate to hunt with, for one thing, my internal group here, like all guys. I mean, we have a great time, and I enjoy hunting with them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in there. So yeah, I can't really. I'm very blessed to have the guys that I've got. So, and I love hunting with them. So, I'm not going to single out anyone
Right.
side. I mean, there's people I've met over the years that I don't have any more room to add, guys to the
crew
at this point. Not unless I don't want to hunt even a few days in the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I think we'll do one more question here.
Okay.
Hub hanger again. I've seen one giant, 1 day of 3 each year for the last 3 years. First day only, midday within range, day 2 and 3 or nothing. Should I only go in there for 1 day and move on? It's all at the same spot.
Hold on. I see it there. I got a quick reading. I wouldn't necessarily say that. As far as what should I only go in there for 1 day and move on? It sounds to me like he probably is a stationary hunter. And I'm thinking what might be, which if that's been working for getting your visual and getting on him, great. But there's nothing maybe holding him back from, climbing down from the tree and making a move. We killed quite a few bucks that way in the early videos when we ran tree stands those first few years, get visuals and make a move, get ahead of them, sneak in on them. That might be a good situation to do that. Here again, it's every situation is different, so it's really hard to say. But seeing how he midday within range, day 2 and 3 nothing. If you're getting a visual in the morning and he's dancing and playing around in that area. I killed one back in 2013, Reckoning. Second buck I ever shot with a longbow. That one we had an 8-hour timber stuck. It started out by me just on a whim rattling, and 3 bucks came off the ridge, not from the same exact spot, but kind of the same area. And I realized what was going on. They were satelliting something up there. And they were just bored, and they come down. And so we made a big loop, got the wind right, crept in there, did lay eyes on them, lost our eyes. They repositioned a few times that day, but it took 8 hours to crawl in on them and finally get him. But that was all timber, and that was going in, that was started out by how I explained there. So probably got to try to get a little bit more aggressive. The passive approach is working for the beginning stages of, getting on them day 1 and getting your visual, but maybe got to hone in on a little bit more aggressive approach potentially to capitalize. The big thing is he's getting the visual. So
he's there.
he's there.
Yeah. My 2 cents are, I mean, that was a good point too. But if you're seeing him, and I don't know if you're seeing him consistently in the same spot, can you try to set up to be in a better spot from where he's coming from there? Like where you could catch him earlier? That's an option. Just kind of, your layout and what you can do better than either of us because we're not there. Um, so just really try to figure out how he's using your piece of land that you're hunting and try to capitalize on it.
Yeah, yeah. And I just saw he commented, "Climb down and go after him." Dang it. Okay, so maybe it's a tough scenario to maybe do that, and then maybe what you just it's thick in there. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Open
Yeah.
by thick. Yeah. And the other option, sometimes the lanes are better just straight off the ground. So if the deer densities aren't very high
Hmm.
there, and you can get away hunting straight on the ground in that particular case, you might get a better shot opportunity when you do see him. If there's not a lot of other deer, you got to worry about,
Hmm.
you know, muddying it up with. So I'm just trying to picture
Try
what
to
this
read. Yeah.
help, but it's
Hmm. It's hard with no context on our end too, because like it's just whatever we're imagining. You actually know what it is, so all we can do is kind of give you general kind of info.
yeah, and maybe there's not a way to set up better because of the wind,
Hmm.
things like that. Maybe
Hmm.
maybe he's already cutting the wind as extreme as he can to
Right.
get with it, but that would be what you kind of mentioned there. Maybe you got to push the threshold on that a little bit more and cut it a little bit tighter,
Hmm.
essentially.
Hmm. Speaking of longbows, I've been wanting to do this for a bit, and I think this is finally the time where I'm gonna pick one up and try getting a deer with one. I think that would be phenomenal to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's another unique, thrilling experience.
Hmm. I'm
Yes.
a thrill chaser, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that'd be fun. Pick one up and start practicing with it soon.
Yeah, they're fun to
So,
shoot even
hmm.
off, all year round. They're fun to shoot. Great
Hmm.
exercise, and so
Hmm.
yeah.
So
And it
kind of
doesn't mean
going
you have to. It doesn't mean you can't shoot compound
right. You don't
or
have to do one or the other. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't. That's one thing. I mean, the care. I mean, I just thought about this the other day. It's like I run a longbow. Tanner did go longbow last year, but he's been compound. He runs a Matthews. Chancey runs a Hoyt.
Hmm.
Funky runs a PSC. It's like whatever suits your fancy, whatever brand,
Hmm.
whatever type of bow, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I loved my compounds back when I was big into all that before the videos.
Hmm.
And I learned how to shoot them very accurately, which is why the first 5 years I could just grab somebody else's, shoot a target
Hmm.
a few times, see how they group at 60, and I had a pretty good idea,
Right.
and so you can. It doesn't mean you have to you pick
Lock down to
one.
one.
I
Yeah.
mean, there are weapons that compounds have such amazing strengths
Hmm.
in certain ways for archers and hunters, and then
Hmm.
longbows and recurves, and then they have their strengths and advantages in certain situations and
Hmm.
scenarios, and certain shooting styles have their strengths and weaknesses,
Hmm.
certain scenarios and situations. So it's really, really, I don't really think you can one size fits all it.
Hmm.
If you could get the power from take a compound and you could draw and release that arrow accurately in less than a second,
Hmm.
well, now you're checking the box of speed of executing the shot. And if you could do it from all these different body positions and angles, now your
Hmm.
versatility and mobility and agility factors way up there. But you see, it's very hard to check all the and one size
Hmm.
fits. Oh, this arrow is the best weight for all, and
Hmm.
there's so many. I'm just trying to get that kind of point. It's really hard to one size fits all. Even hunting, am I better to hunt on the ground or the trees? Well, okay, I want to actually not eat my tag. Okay, well, what's the deer densities in this particular situation? There's a
Hmm.
lot of factors, and that's where the hunter has to decide, or if you're talking archer,
Right.
archer has to decide. What they want to get out of the weapon. What do you want to get out of hunting? What do you want to get out of the experience? If it's just to put some meat in the freezer,
Hmm.
and that's really the main thing, Well, then get a compound and
Mm-hmm.
get really precise and accurate and set your situations up for situations that are really going to be really effective scenarios for that weapon. In tight close, I've found that a traditional bow generally has the advantage. Of course, it doesn't have the advantage as much with precise accuracy, especially with
Mm-hmm.
really cranking speed of executing the shot. So, and I'm getting sidetracked there. I'm just, uh, I think, that's got to be left to the hunter,
Mm-hmm.
to really,
Find your preference. Go shoot them all. Figure
yeah,
it out.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, we're all different. We have different builds. World of differences. But yeah, I thought that would be an awesome thing to try. So definitely going to do that. And I want to kind of leave the rest of the time here as a platform for you. Say whatever about your brand. Tell them where to find you,
Sure.
the works, what you do.
Yeah. We've got Instagram, Whitetail Adrenaline, Facebook, Whitetail Adrenaline, TikTok, Whitetail Adrenaline, and then whitetailadrenaline.com. That's our website. That's where we got all the DVDs and apparel. And then the Resurgence title that is available on iTunes and Amazon for people that have never watched our content, maybe don't have a DVD player or a Whitetail Adrenaline machine that plays the content.
Mm-hmm.
So they can just go right on their smart TV and watch it right there. So the research
Awesome.
title. So
Awesome.
yep.
And you guys just released a DVD like here within the last couple months.
Yeah, it's a DVD set. It's got 7
Yes.
in there. It's 15 hours long, so it's a big
Mm-hmm.
one. But yeah, that just released.
Mm-hmm.
Long time in the making.
Yeah, I'd say so. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
right. So thank you so much for joining. And for those of you listening, be sure to follow both Whitetail Adrenaline and then follow Veganless across the platforms. I am mainly self-filming, working on getting some fellow filmers to be able to do more fun content. So yeah, hunting content, fishing, bow fishing, etc. You could expect, and follow these guys. And once this ends, the YouTube video will go into the podcast playlist, and it'll still be available in video format, but the audio will go to all of the different podcast platforms in podcast land. So thank you so much. And if you guys do watch on Spotify, be sure to go leave a rating to help try to push it out. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, and I appreciate all the questions and everything, and the support. Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep killing the game, man. You guys are truly original.
And for anybody in Ohio, we're going to be there this weekend for the big open season Sportsman's Expo, and then Wisconsin Dells next weekend. I forgot to mention that. So, and Chancey's going to make it to Ohio. So
Oh, nice.
So I got to put some things together there and let the people know. So
They have the best booth display out there. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys.